Have you ever woken up thinking life was ordinary only to find out an entire neighborhood had been built on land that was legally yours? That's exactly what happened to me. One morning, I discovered that an HOA had already put up 68 brand new homes on property tied to my family for generations. From the road, the neat rows looked like a picture-perfect suburb-trimmed lawns, glossy paint, and for sale signs swaying in the breeze. But behind that polished surface hid a dark truth. Every one of those houses was standing on stolen ground. My grandfather's farm, our family's legacy, had been erased from county records decades earlier, replaced with forged boundaries and rubber-stamped permits. When I unearthed the original surveys and found a warning letter he left behind, a chilling realization set in. By law, those homes weren't Maple Ridge HOAs. They belonged to me. What followed was a storm of lawsuits, intimidation, and small-town corruption. But in the end, I turned their scheme back on them in a way they never expected. Before we dive into this fight, drop a comment below with your location and the current time. I love seeing how far our community reaches around the world. The call came just after sunrise. The voice on the other end shook with urgency. Daniel, you need to get back here. They're building on your grandfather's land. 68 houses, entire streets already, and the signs are up. At first, I thought Mrs. Atkins, my grandfather's old neighbor, had to be mistaken. She'd lived beside him for over 40 years, familiar with every county project, road repairs, utility work, the usual. But the fear in her tone made me throw on clothes, grab my keys, and drive 4 hours straight back to Brookdale. By the time I turned onto the dirt road leading to the farmhouse, my stomach was knotted. I hadn't been back since the funeral 6 months earlier. The land had always felt like a sanctuary, golden field stretching wide, the leaning red barn, the air rich with clover and soil. But as I crested the hill overlooking the north acreage, the sight hit me like a gut punch. Bulldozers had flattened the soybean fields. Asphalt shimmered under the sun where dark earth once fed crops. Rows of identical beige townhouses stood in military formation, each with gray shingles and perfect white fences. A banner whipped in the wind. Welcome to Maple Ridge East, starting at $400,000. I pulled closer, tires crunching over gravel. Workers in hard hats hammered, painted, and planted shrubs. This wasn't a half-done project. It was nearly finished. Families would be moving in any day. At the model home, a polished woman with a clipboard caught my eye. Blonde hair and a perfect bun, spotless blazer, she looked untouched by the chaos around her. The type who didn't just enforce rules but bent them for her own gain. Heart pounding, I walked up. "Excuse me. What's happening here?" She glanced up, gave me the same look you'd give a door-to-door salesman, then scribbled something down. Finally, she spoke. "Residential development. Maple Ridge HOA is expanding." I stood my ground. "I'm Daniel Harris. My grandfather, Henry Harris, owned this farm. He left it to me. This land belongs to my family." She extended a manicured hand with a cold smile. "Lucinda Ward, president of Maple Ridge HOA. There must be a mistake. We purchased this parcel years ago. Every permit, every county approval is in order." I refused her handshake. "Impossible. My grandfather never sold this farm." Her eyes flickered pity or maybe disdain. "Perhaps he didn't tell you. The sale closed in 1995. Everything is official. I suggest you take it up with our legal team. Now, if you'll excuse me." She turned away, barking orders into her phone as bulldozers roared behind me. My fists clenched. Later that afternoon, I pulled into the farmhouse driveway, dust swirling. The place looked frozen in time, peeling white paint, rusted mailbox, porch swing creaking. Mrs. Atkins sat waiting with 2 glasses of iced tea, her face tight with worry. "They've been at this for months," she said, pressing a glass into my hand. Your grandfather fought them right up until the end. He knew something was off, always muttering about papers. About boundaries. Papers? I asked. She nodded. He spent his last weeks digging through his office. Said he had to protect the farm. Inside, the house smelled of pipe tobacco and worn leather like stepping into a memory. Grandpa's office was untouched. Shelves of ledgers, stacks of almanacs, decades of rain charts and yield records. I rifled through drawers and binders, but nothing about a sale. Hours passed, shadows lengthening across the walls. Just as I was ready to give up, my foot struck something loose under the desk. I pried up a floorboard with a screwdriver, revealing a small metal box. A key dangled from a nail beneath the desk. My hand shook as I unlocked it. Inside, yellowed documents. My grandfather's will naming me sole heir. The original farm deed, ink faded but clear. A 1915 survey, updated in 1979. And on top, a folded letter addressed in his handwriting. If you're reading this, someone is trying to take what is ours. Developers came with lies and papers. I never signed. If they claim otherwise, it's a forgery. The truth is in the boundaries. Compare the old surveys to the county records. You'll see what they did. My chest tightened. Grandpa had known this day would come. He left me the tools to fight. The 1915 survey showed the farm, stretched 80 acres beyond what the county now claimed, the exact land where Lucinda's houses stood. If these papers held up, Maple Ridge hadn't just trespassed. They'd built entire neighborhoods on property that still belonged to me. And under the law, if the land was mine, so were the houses. I whispered into the empty room, Grandpa, I won't let you down. The battle lines were drawn. Lucinda Ward thought she had won, but she had just stepped into a trap my grandfather had set decades ago, and I was ready to spring it. The next morning, I spread the documents across the oak kitchen table like a general planning war. Dawnlight filtered through lace curtains, illuminating every ink stroke of the century-old surveys. Each line was a weapon waiting to be used. According to those maps, Maple Ridge HOA hadn't just stolen farmland, they had built an empire on my inheritance. But paper wasn't enough. I needed legal firepower. I picked up the phone and dialed the one number I still remembered, Victor Tran, the lawyer who once helped Grandpa in a tax dispute. To my surprise, he answered on the first ring, Daniel Harris. His voice was slow, measured. Haven't heard that name in years. What brings you calling so early? They built houses, Victor, I said, forcing my breath steady. 68 homes on my land, and I've got the surveys to prove it. A stunned silence, then a low whistle. Bring everything to my Brookdale office today. This isn't something to let sit. By mid-morning I was there, my truck stacked with grandfather's files. Victor's office smelled of aging books and strong coffee. He wore a rumpled gray suit and had his glasses perched low as he inspected the deed, the surveys, and Grandpa's letter like a doctor reading x-rays. These are dynamite, he said at last, tapping the yellowed pages. If they're genuine, and they look genuine, we're looking at a quiet title action. You can clear title in your name and void any transfers made without your consent. And the houses? I asked quietly. Victor met my gaze. If the land is yours, Daniel, the structures on it are legally yours as well. 68 homes. You could sell them, rent them, or tear them down, though I wouldn't recommend the last option. He leaned back, fingers steepled. But this will get ugly. They'll pull strings at the county, put pressure on officials. First step, file an emergency injunction to stop sales and construction. Then we petition the court to hear your claim. I'll call a forensic document examiner to test those signatures. If Grandpa never sold, somebody forged the papers. I gripped the folded letter like a talisman. He warned me, I thought. He expected this. That afternoon we went to the county courthouse. The marble corridors echoed as the clerk's stamp fell with a heavy thunk, the first salvo. In what felt like a long war, the HOA didn't sit back. By dusk, a white SUV reading Maple Ridge compliance idled at the end of the driveway. Two men in palas lounged against it, pretending to glide through their phones. When I tried to drive past, one stepped forward with a clipboard. "Violation notice," he said flatly. "Unauthorized vehicle access." "This road is HOA property now." I let out a harsh laugh. "Nice try." "This has always been my driveway." He shrugged, slapped the notice on my windshield, and retreated. Inside, Mrs. Atkins had set out dinner, steaming chicken casserole, hands trembling as she placed the dish on the table. "They'll bury you in fines and violations like they did the Johnsons and the Ramirez family," she whispered. "Anyone who resisted got crushed." "I'm not here to ruin lives," I said, stomach tightening. "I have proof. That night I pored over more of Grandpa's records, ledgers of rainfall, yield charts, repair notes. The man tracked everything. In a folder labeled Easements and Boundaries, I found county filings from 1986 and 1998 that had shifted the northern boundary. The signatures were shaky imitations of Grandpa's neat hand. He would never have written like this. The next morning, Victor arranged for a certified surveyor, Carter Holt, to walk the property. Carter, a no-nonsense man in his 60s with sun-leathered skin, compared the old maps to GPS points for hours. When he returned, he shook his head. "Your grandfather's surveys are accurate. The county records have been altered. They shaved nearly 80 acres off the north and east." "That's not an error. That's intentional." Hearing it aloud made the theft feel real. Word spread fast. By day 3, relatives and strangers were at the farmhouse, angry and frightened. A young couple, the Millers, knocked at the door. "We closed last month," the husband stammered, twisting his cap. "Are you saying the house isn't ours?" I exhaled. "Legally, the land is mine, which would include the house. But I'm not trying to wreck lives. I want justice, not chaos." Behind them, more neighbors gathered, faces drawn, children clinging to parents. Lucinda had set me against people she'd duped. That night my phone buzzed with a blocked number. "You're making a mistake," Lucinda's voice purred through the line. "Dusty papers won't change county records. The county's with us. The bank's with us. The homeowners will stand against you. Drop the claim while you can." Her tone dripped certainty and the threat of fear. That gave me a strange courage. I stared out at the dark outline of those 68 houses and felt Grandpa's weight in my bones. Lucinda had tried to erase him with bulldozers and forged signatures. She underestimated both him and me. This was bigger than land. It was about righting a rotten system. Soon I wouldn't just be defending a farm. I'd be laying claim to every house she'd built. 3 days after we filed, the court granted a temporary stop work order. For the first time since I'd driven back to Brookdale, the bulldozers on the northern fields fell silent. Yellow machines sat idle like soldiers waiting for command. It felt like surfacing after drowning, but I knew it was only a pause. Victor arrived at the farmhouse early, tie-askew and briefcase overflowing. "They'll contest the injunction immediately," he said, setting papers on the kitchen table where Grandpa once balanced ledgers. "But this gives us breathing room. We need more than surveys. We need evidence of fraud." He produced the 1986 and 1998 filings I.D. found. "I've scheduled a handwriting analyst. If those are forgeries, it's criminal. If it's criminal, we can go on offense." I nodded, uneasy but determined. Victor's strategy was meticulous. Validate the old surveys, expose manipulation of county records, and prove Maple Ridge acted knowingly. I have all three held. Every house on that site would legally be mine. That afternoon we drove to the county recorder's office, a squat brick building under buzzing fluorescent lights. The clerk, a weary woman named Caroline, blinked when Victor asked for the original transfer paperwork. After some hemming and hawing, she disappeared into the stacks and returned with two thin files. Victor spread them out on the counter, and I leaned forward. There it was, the 1995 sale of the Northern Acreage, recorded to Brookdale Development, LLC, one of the shell companies tied to Maple Ridge HOA. The signature, purporting to be my grandfather's, was a nervous, jagged scrawl, nothing like the confident cursive on his farm ledgers. Even worse, the notary block was blank, no seal, no stamp, an empty square. "This is trash," Victor muttered. "Not even properly notarized," someone nearby hissed. If this passed county review, somebody surely looked the other way. Caroline's mouth tightened. She lowered her voice. "You didn't hear it from me, but Commissioner Avery sat on the planning board then. He and Ward's husband are golf buddies. Brookdale Development wasn't squeaky clean. Around here, money drowns out questions." My anger simmered. They'd bet on Grandpa being too frail, too isolated to fight. They didn't count on me. As we stepped outside, a black SUV idled across the street. The driver's shades hid his eyes while he pretended to check his phone. Not a coincidence. Maple Ridge was watching. A storm rolled in that evening. Rain hammered the farmhouse roof while I sat knee-deep in documents, highlighter in hand. Mrs. Atkins arrived with more casserole, shaking as she reached into her pocket and produced a damp envelope. "They sent another notice," she said. "HOA says you owe $120 for unregistered vehicles on the property. They even photographed your truck," I laughed, bitter. "On my land. Incredible." She squeezed my arm. "Don't let them wear you down, Daniel. They crushed others. But you Henry's blood fight like he would." The next morning Victor called with the handwriting analyst's preliminary results. The signatures on the boundary changes were inconsistent with Grandpa's known hand, in plain terms, forgery. Victor's intern had also traced Brookdale Development LLC and found the same 6 names recurring across related companies: Lucinda Ward, her husband Martin, Commissioner Avery, Planning Board member Wilson, and 2 contractors. A tangle of conflicts, each link fouler than the last. Victor leaned in, sharp-eyed. "Here's the twist. They used your land as collateral on a $12 million construction loan. The bank thinks the land is theirs. But if a court declares it stolen property, that loan collapses, the bank goes after them. Banks don't forgive fraud." For the first time, I felt a shift. It wasn't only me against the HOA. It was me, the law, and soon the bank's lawyers. That evening, I went back to the site. The machinery lay quiet under tarps. Unfinished roofs glistened with rain. Lucinda strode across the lot, heels clicking, phone glued to her ear. She spotted me, snapped the call shut, and smiled like a blade. "Cute injunction," she said. "But these houses are sold. Families are moving in. Do you want to be the man who takes homes from kids?" Her words stung, but I didn't waver. "I want what's mine. The law's on my side." She closed in, perfume cloying in the damp air. "Drop this," she purred. "We'll give you $2 million tax-free. Walk away. Nobody ever has to know. $2 million dangled like bait, enough to change everything." But Grandpa's folded letter flashed in my mind. If they claim otherwise, it's a forgery. I met her gaze. "Not for sale." For a beat, her composure cracked. Then she laughed, cold and hollow. "You're a fool, Harris. You don't know who you're up against." She turned and strode away, umbrella snapping open. I stood in the rain, furious, staring at those 68 homes, monuments to arrogance and fraud. but they wouldn't stay theirs. I planned to use the law to take them back brick by brick. The week that followed felt like living under siege. Maple Ridge shifted from construction to harassment, weaponizing their rules. Notices began to appear daily, slipped under the farmhouse door, taped to my windshield, shoved into the mailbox. Unauthorized paint color, improper vehicle storage, failure to maintain lawn. Each notice carried fines from $200 up to $1,000, printed on crisp Maple Ridge letterhead. The farmhouse sat on a gravel lot among corn stubble. Still they claimed jurisdiction. The intimidation escalated. One night I peered through the blinds to see 3 SUVs blocking the end of the driveway, headlights blazing into the windows like interrogation lights. Men lingered in the shadows, cigarettes glowing, radios crackling, private security, clearly on someone's payroll. I called the sheriff. The dispatcher was apologetic. "Sir, this is a civil dispute. Unless there's an imminent threat, we can't intervene." "Talk to your lawyer." Victor wasn't surprised. Lucinda pulls strings. Sheriff Daniels owes his election to the commissioner tied to this. Don't waste breath. Document everything. This harassment helps us later. Around then, the first cracks inside Maple Ridge began to show. One rainy night, a knock sounded at the door. Standing there was Joel Whitman, the HOA treasurer, mid-40s, balding, his shirt damp. He looked like a man carrying too much guilt. "I shouldn't be here," he stammered. "If Lucinda finds out, she'll destroy me. Then why risk it?" I asked. Joel hesitated, then handed over a flash drive. "Because what she's doing isn't just wrong. It's illegal. I won't go down with her." At the kitchen table, I plugged it in. The drive opened onto a trove of HOA financials, budgets, invoices, bank transfers. My jaw tightened as I scrolled. Tens of thousands labeled as special assessments funneled into companies with familiar names: Maple Management LLC, Ward Landscaping, Brookdale Legal Services. A quick cross-check showed them all tied back to Lucinda or her relatives. Joel rubbed his temples. Last year alone, homeowners paid nearly $500,000 in fees. Less than half of the money ever touched real upkeep. The rest vanished into Lucinda's shell companies. She'd been draining homeowners for years. "Why come to me?" I asked. Joel exhaled. "Because you rattled her. When you showed those surveys, I saw it in her face. She's losing her grip. People are fed up. They've been fined for tomato plants, for laundry lines, for kids' bikes on porches. They're waiting for someone to stand up." I nodded slowly. Grandpa's words echoed. "Land isn't just soil, Daniel. It's the lives built on it. Maybe this fight wasn't only about acres. Maybe it was about freeing a whole community from tyranny wrapped in rules." The next day, proof of that frustration arrived. Families began knocking, hesitant at first. The Johnsons fined $500 because their mailbox clashed. The Ramirezes threatened with foreclosure over a shed. Leah, a single mother, forced to pay $900 because her boy left a basketball hoop in the driveway. Each story carried the same exhaustion, humiliation, and fear. One by one, I showed them Grandpa's surveys, the forged deeds, the bogus transfers. At first, doubt clouded their faces, afraid to believe Lucinda could be beaten. But when Joel revealed the financials, everything shifted. Hope flickered, faint but real. That night my phone lit up with texts from numbers I didn't know. "We support you." She fined us $300 for a garden gnome. She made us tear down a porch swing. Count us in. By midnight, 27 messages glowed on the screen. A small army of the disillusioned. Lucinda noticed. 2 nights later, as I sat on the porch with coffee, the phone rang. Her voice oozed through the line. "Daniel, it'd be tragic if this fight destroyed you. Brookdale's small. Contractors, inspectors, utilities, they all answer to us. I'd hate to see your water cut off. Or your power. The call ended. A chill gripped me. Within a day, her threats materialized. Water slowed to a trickle, then stopped scheduled maintenance, the utility claimed. That evening, a county inspector showed up unannounced, clipboard in hand, citing me for faulty wiring, a leaning railing, a septic violation, each carrying heavy fines. Repairs would run thousands. The final insult? A pizza driver refused my order, saying my address didn't exist in the GPS system anymore. Psychological warfare. I was the target. But instead of breaking me, it hardened my resolve. That night Joel returned, more files in hand, eyes flicking nervously toward the fields where Maple Ridge's hired men still lingered. He booted up his laptop, pulling up HOA meeting minutes. In bold print, one entry jumped out. Motion passed to use remaining Harris parcel as collateral for expansion loan. Title irregularities dismissed as settled. Title irregularities, I repeated. They knew. Joel nodded grimly. They've always known. They banked on no one caring enough to fight. I leaned back, staring at the farmhouse beams darkened with age. Well, they miscalculated. The next morning I laid out a plan. No more waiting for Lucinda's blows. I would rally the homeowners, expose the fraud, and offer them something Maple Ridge never did: honesty. If the court ruled in my favor, I wouldn't throw families out. I'd sell them their homes fairly, legally, free from bogus fines, bold, risky, and guaranteed to enrage Lucinda. But for the first time since stepping foot back in Brookdale, I wasn't just defending Grandpa's farm. I was fighting for a community. And this time, I wasn't alone. 2 weeks later, the community center overflowed. Folding chairs scraped on the linoleum as neighbors packed the hall, clutching HOA violation notices and receipts for arbitrary assessments. My palms sweated as I gripped Grandpa's surveys like shields. Victor had insisted on the reveal. Sunlight's the best disinfectant, he'd told me. If you want the tide to turn, let them see the truth. At 7 sharp, the side doors burst open. Lucinda strode in, heels clicking like gunfire, crimson blazer blazing, smile sharp as a warning. Board members trailed behind, tense and uneasy. "Good evening, neighbors," she called, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Tonight is about celebrating Maple Ridge's success: 68 homes, new families, rising values. Lies. Someone shouted. The room rippled with anger. For a moment, her smile cracked. "We'll take questions after the presentation," she snapped. I stepped forward, raising my voice. "This can't wait. My name is Daniel Harris, grandson of Henry Harris, who owned this land for 70 years. And I have proof Maple Ridge is built on stolen property." Gasps echoed. Lucinda froze, her knuckles white around the podium. I held up the first survey. "This is from 1915, another. And this from 1979. Both show the northern boundary 80 acres further than the county claims. That means all 68 houses here stand on Harris land." The room erupted voices of fear, disbelief, outrage. "Are you saying my house isn't mine?" A man shouted, his wife gripping his arm. "I'm saying Maple Ridge lied," I answered. "They used forgeries and corrupt officials to erase my grandfather's land. They built over it. And if the court rules, as evidence shows it must, this neighborhood legally belongs to me, not the HOA." Chaos thundered through the crowd. A young mother clutched her baby. Board members exchanged panicked looks. Lucinda slammed her hand on the podium. "This is extortion. He's trying to steal what you bought in good faith." I dropped the surveys and forged transfers on the podium. "Look at the signatures. Compare them to Grandpa's ledgers. Even an amateur can see the forgeries. And here's the kicker. I held up another folder. They used my land as collateral for a $12 million loan. If the court rules for me, that loan collapses. Did you tell homeowners about that, Lucinda? Her mask faltered, sweat glistening. And Joel Whitman stood, trembling but clear. He's telling the truth. I've seen the accounts. Money's been siphoned for years' assessments, landscaping, contracts, security all funneled into Lucinda's companies. The room went dead silent. Every eye fixed on her. You snake, she spat at Joel. This betrayal will cost you. Joel didn't flinch. His eyes swept across the crowd instead. We deserve clarity. We deserve fairness. And Daniel Harris is giving us something we've never had before, a real path to own our homes without threats, fake penalties, or intimidation. Whispers of agreement rippled. Someone shouted, "We stand with Daniel." Then another and another until the room swelled with voices. Lucinda's polished facade cracked. She jabbed a finger toward me, her tone sharp and piercing. You think you've won because you parade dusty papers around? I dine with the commissioner every Thursday. I host the judge's wife at bridge. You are nothing here. I took a step forward, my words calm but cutting. Maybe, but my grandfather was everything to this town. He left me more than land, he left me neighbors who respected his word. He left me the truth. And that truth doesn't belong to you. The room erupted in thunderous applause. For the first time, I saw fear flash in Lucinda's eyes. When the meeting ended, clusters of residents surrounded me, asking questions, some hopeful, some desperate. A young woman tugged at my sleeve. My name's Rachel, she whispered. We bought a lot just last month. Everything we had went into it. Please, don't take our dream away. Her pleading eyes cut through my adrenaline. I crouched slightly to meet her gaze. I'm not here to take homes. I'm here to fix what's broken. If the court rules in my favor, I'll sell back every home legally, fairly, and free from Lucinda's chokehold. Tears welled in her eyes. She gave a shaky nod. Thank you. As I left the hall, I felt Lucinda's glare burning holes in my back. She stood flanked by two board members, whispering furiously into her phone, no doubt calling in every favor she had left. Retaliation was coming. But tonight, the tide shifted. No longer did people see me as a threat to their homes. They saw me as a way out. And Lucinda knew it. Back at the farmhouse, my phone lit up with dozens of messages from residents pledging support. Joel's text stood out. You lit the fire tonight. Be ready for the explosion. I stepped onto the porch, gazing across the dark fields at the neat rows of 68 houses. For weeks, they had felt like monuments to my grandfather's absence. Now they looked like leverage not just against Lucinda, but against every system she had poisoned. For the first time, I believed I could win. The very next morning, the Brookdale Gazette carried a headline that cut deeper than any threat. Lucinda could throw HOA under fire. 68 homes on contested land. The article quoted me. Victor, even Joel. It exposed in brutal detail how Maple Ridge HOA had used forged documents to seize control and how the homes people lived in could legally belong to me. The story spread like wildfire. By noon, my phone buzzed nonstop calls from reporters, neighboring towns, even strangers demanding answers. Lucinda struck back exactly as expected by staging a press conference in front of the Maple Ridge Clubhouse, flanked by Commissioner Avery and two board members. I watched on the local news, sipping coffee from Grandpa's chipped mug. This man exploits grieving families, Lucinda declared, her voice trembling with manufactured outrage. He waves century-old papers and dares to claim homes where children sleep. Maple Ridge has every legal approval. The county stands with us, but when a reporter pressed about forged signatures and missing notary stamps, her mask slipped. She faltered, snapped, then stormed off camera. Avery scrambled to spin it, but the damage was done. That evening, Victor showed up at the farmhouse with something new, an environmental report. He dropped it on the table with a grin. "Remember the wetlands at the north edge? Your grandfather protected them. Turns out they're home to 2 endangered species. Under the Clean Water Act, Section 404, it's a federal crime to build there without permits. Maple Ridge never even applied." I flipped through the pages, photos of herons, nesting maps, soil studies. Undeniable proof. "So not only is the land mine," I said, "but building here is flat out illegal." Victor smiled for the first time in weeks. "Exactly. This isn't Lucinda's rigged court anymore. It's federal. She can't bribe her way out of this." 2 days later, black SUVs rolled into the muddy construction site. Federal inspectors and windbreakers swarmed the area, snapping photos of half-built foundations sinking in protected wetlands. By evening, word had spread. Homeowners once terrified of me now rallied outside the farmhouse with hand-painted signs. "Fair homes, not fraud. Save Brookdale." Children waved banners while parents honked in solidarity. For the first time, Lucinda wasn't just fighting me, she was fighting her own town. But she wasn't finished. The following night, while I pored over documents, headlights swept across my farmhouse windows. 3 white SUVs rumbled into the yard. Men in dark jackets stepped out, boots crunching on gravel. One shoved a thick envelope into my hand. "Cease and desist," he said coldly. "Drop your claims or face criminal charges." I ripped it open. False accusations, threats of fines, even jail. Attached were doctored photos showing me trespassing on HOA property. The kicker? They were taken in my own driveway. Victor's advice rang in my head. Document everything. I snapped photos of the SUVs, the men, the letter. Then I stepped forward. "Get off my land," the leader smirked. "Enjoy your farmhouse while you can. It won't be yours much longer." But he was wrong. The law was finally swinging in my direction. The next morning, Carolyn from the county recorder's office showed up, eyes darting nervously as she handed me a folder. "I shouldn't be doing this, but you need to see it." Inside were memos from the 1990s when the boundaries were redrawn. One bore Commissioner Avery's signature authorizing changes without a full review. Another referenced a verbal approval from Planning Director Wilson. Neither was legally valid. Both were smoking guns. Caroline's voice dropped. They buried these deep. But once the feds started digging, I pulled them. Daniel. They knew exactly what they were doing. By now, fear in the community had turned into fury. Families once too afraid to act now showed up at my door with food, bottled water, even handshakes of support. Mrs. Ramirez, tears in her eyes, told me, "We've suffered under her fines for years. If you can free us, we'll stand with you." Their solidarity gave me the strength to take the next step, a second community meeting. This time, I called it myself. Flyers spread across Brookdale. Emergency meeting, your home, your future. Friday night, Brookdale High Auditorium. That night, the parking lot overflowed. Inside, hundreds packed the auditorium. Homeowners, neighbors, even laid-off workers from the halted site. The stage was mine. I stepped to the podium, raising Grandpa's survey high for everyone to see. "The court will soon confirm what we already know. This land was taken unlawfully. And when that ruling comes, I won't throw families into the street. I'll sell every home back to you properly, lawfully, and free from the corruption of Maple Ridge HOA. Together, we can create a new association, one that doesn't drain you with bogus penalties, but actually protects its people." The hall thundered with applause. People rose to their feet, some clapping so hard their eyes brimmed with tears. Then I dropped the revelation. And another truth, Maple Ridge constructed part of this community on federally protected wetlands. Federal law won't allow it. They gambled with your lives and they lost. The room gasped, followed by a rumble of angry voices. Joel stood in the front row and raised his hand. I've reviewed the accounts. Over $400,000 of your dues lined Lucinda's pockets last year. Landscaping contracts went to her nephew. Security contracts to her brother-in-law. It stops tonight. The crowd roared louder, chants breaking out. Down with Ward! Down with Ward! Lucinda herself was present. She stormed toward the stage, her face red with rage. You idiots! She shrieked, jabbing her finger at me. He'll destroy you all. He doesn't care about your homes, he wants control. But her voice was drowned in the echoing chorus of boos. People literally turned their backs on her. And in that instant, her greatest weapon fear slipped from her grasp. I lifted my hand, calling for silence. This fight isn't about me. It's about every family here. Yes, it's about the Harris land, but it's also about freedom from oppression. Tonight, I ask you, will you stand with me? The response crashed like a wave. Nearly every hand shot into the air. The roar of hope and anger rolled across the auditorium, crumbling the foundations of Lucinda's reign. She glared, lips curling into a snarl. You'll pay for this, Harris. I promise. But in her eyes, I saw it cornered fear. That night, walking to my truck, I wasn't alone. Dozens of homeowners surrounded me, shaking my hand, thanking me, pledging loyalty. For the first time since this battle began, I didn't feel like a single heir clinging to a dead man's farm. I felt like the leader of a movement. Lucinda had her threats. I carried the truth, the law, and now the people. Together, we were unstoppable. The courthouse smelled of aged parchment and polished wood. I sat at the plaintiff's table, the weight of sleepless nights and endless harassment pressing on me. This was it, the first major hearing of Harris v. Maple Ridge HOA. Across the aisle, Lucinda sat rigid in a tailored navy suit, her eyes cold, her lips twisted into the same smug smile she used to cow homeowners. 3 high-priced attorneys flanked her. Yet, I could see the tension in her shoulders. She knew momentum had shifted. Victor leaned close and whispered, "Stay steady. The documents will speak for themselves." The judge entered, a stout man with thinning hair, known for fairness. We are here to determine the validity of the Harris property surveys and the contested boundary adjustments filed in 1986 and 1998. His gavel cracked. Proceed. Victor strode to the evidence board, unrolling Grandpa's 1915 survey enlarged onto a poster. Your Honor, this survey, updated in 1979, clearly shows the Harris farm extending 80 acres farther north and east. For decades, Henry Harris farmed this land, paid his taxes, never disputed. Then suddenly, in 1995, a shell company tied to Maple Ridge HOA filed a transfer. But Henry Harris never signed a single deed. He flipped to the forged paperwork, then displayed Grandpa's authentic signature from his will. The contrast was unmistakable, one clean and fluid, the other shaky and sloppy. To prove this, Victor said, we've called a forensic handwriting expert. An older woman with wire-rimmed glasses stepped up. She spoke calmly, pointing to hesitation marks, letter shapes, pressure patterns. In my expert opinion, the signatures on the 1986 and 1998 documents were not written by Henry Harris. Lucinda's lawyers objected, but the judge cut them off. Overruled. Continue. Next came Carolyn, the county clerk. Nervous, she recounted the buried memos tying Commissioner Avery to the shady filings. Proper process was ignored, she confessed. No notary stamps. No full review. The changes should never have been accepted. She produced the memos, Avery's signature clear on the page. The courtroom buzzed, even the judge's brow furrowed. Then came the ace up our sleeve. Joel was called to the stand. The treasurer carried a binder thick with Maple Ridge's financial records. His voice shook at first, but grew steady. For 7 years, I've watched Lucinda funnel homeowner dues into her relatives' businesses: landscaping, security, legal retainers. No bids, inflated invoices. Hundreds of thousands gone. When Daniel Harris showed me the surveys, I realized this land wasn't ours to begin with. That's when I chose to speak. Lucinda leapt up, slamming her palms on the table. Lies. He's bitter and disloyal. Sit down, Miss Ward, the judge snapped. One more outburst and you'll be held in contempt. The gallery erupted in whispers. Homeowners nodded, murmurs of agreement spreading. For the first time, I felt the community at my back inside that courtroom. When Lucinda's side argued, they fumbled. They claimed outdated surveys, clerical errors, county maps as final authority. But when pressed about Avery's role and missing stamps, they faltered. Worse, when questioned about the $12 million loan against my land, Lucinda's face flushed crimson. She muttered about routine financing, but the judge's frown deepened. By the day's end, the ruling came. The injunction stands until full review is complete. Evidence of fraud is compelling. The gavel struck. Court adjourned. Not final victory, but momentum. Outside, reporters swarmed me. Cameras flashing, mics shoved forward. Mr. Harris, do you truly intend to claim all 68 homes? I steadied my voice. I intend to do what's right. The law says the land is mine, so the homes are too. But I won't evict anyone. I'll give families the chance to own their homes legitimately, free from corruption. Everyone deserves fairness. Everyone deserves honesty. Behind me, jeers rose as Lucinda was hustled into her SUV, the crowd shouting accusations. You robbed us, Lucinda. Where's our money? Her empire was collapsing in real time. That evening, my farmhouse porch overflowed again, this time not with threats, but gratitude. Families gathered, kids laughing in the yard while parents thanked me with tears. Mrs. Ramirez hugged me tight. For years, he made us feel like squatters in our own homes. You gave us back dignity. I looked toward the abandoned construction site, half-built houses standing hollow in the fading light. This fight wasn't finished. Lucinda still had her allies, her bankroll, and her venom. But I held something stronger: truth, anchored in law, and a community finally willing to stand with me. On the porch, Victor sipped sweet tea, his eyes steady. You know what's next, right? Discovery. We'll dig through her emails, her accounts, every last file. If there's rot, and there is, we'll drag it into the light. I nodded, jaw clenched. Good. She buried my grandfather's legacy once. Now she'll learn what happens when the truth refuses to stay buried. The cicadas hummed as night deepened, blending with neighbors' laughter drifting across my yard. For the first time since this storm began, I allowed myself a smile. The snare Grandpa set decades earlier was tightening, and Lucinda Ward had nowhere left to run. The weeks blurred into a grind of subpoenas, depositions, and long nights. Victor worked relentlessly, piecing together an arsenal that tore through Maple Ridge's defenses. Each email, each bank statement Joel uncovered told the same story in HOA, twisted into Lucinda's private empire. Discovery revealed bloated contracts to her nephew's landscaping firm, triple the market price. Payments funneled into her brother-in-law's so-called security team, little more than men leaning on SUVs with cigarettes. Even the association's legal fees disappeared into a shell company under her control. In just 5 years, over $600,000 had vanished. When the records hit the press, the fury was volcanic. Homeowners demanded answers. News crews swarmed cul-de-sacs once praised for their perfection. now exposing retirees forced to sell under crushing fines, single parents bankrupted by fees, families stripped of savings. The polished image of Maple Ridge collapsed overnight. Meanwhile, the wetlands case gathered force. Federal agents confirmed what we already knew: 12 of the 68 houses were planted directly in protected marshland. Each was a violation under federal law, punishable by penalties that could gut even the boldest developer. Under mounting pressure, the bank behind Lucinda's $12 million loan froze the HOA's accounts. Contractors abandoned the site. What was once a proud development stood hollow, a graveyard of half-built shells, a monument to greed. Then came the judgment. The courthouse overflowed, homeowners lining the halls, reporters jammed shoulder to shoulder. The judge's voice rang firm as he read, based on the Harris surveys from 1915 and 1979, the forged signatures of 1986 and 1998, and overwhelming evidence of fraudulent transfers. This court rules the Harris family as rightful owner of the contested land. All 68 homes built upon it are declared legal property of Daniel Harris. Gasps rippled. Some broke down in tears. Lucinda's face drained, her knuckles white against the table as if holding on for balance. But the judge wasn't done. Furthermore, given the financial misconduct revealed during discovery, this court refers Ms. Ward and associated board members to the district attorney for investigation into fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Effective immediately, Maple Ridge HOA is dissolved pending reorganization. The gavel thundered. Years of corruption collapsed with a single strike. My legs shook as I stood, the weight of the room pressing in. Reporters shouted, homeowners surged forward. But my thoughts drifted only to Grandpa and the promise I made in his quiet office. I won't let you down. In the days that followed, I kept it. I sat with every homeowner one by one. Some were furious, some scared, most simply exhausted. To all, I offered the same path: buy their homes at fair value, free of Lucinda's grip. No more bogus fines. No arbitrary rules. Just clean titles and honest contracts. Many wept with relief as they agreed. A few hesitated, but even they came to see I wasn't Lucinda. The money wasn't a windfall. Much of it went back into legal fees, restoring the farmhouse, and building what Grandpa would have wanted, a community park. On the wetlands Lucinda once dreamed of paving, we created a conservation preserve. Wooden walkways now wound through tall grasses, plaques describing the herons and turtles who belonged there long before us. Where bulldozers once clawed the earth, children now laughed and played. Lucinda's downfall came swift and merciless. Stripped of her title, indicted on multiple charges, abandoned by every official she once owned. Rumors swirled: plea deals, prison time, fortunes lost. But none of it mattered. She destroyed herself, just as Grandpa predicted. A year later, I sat on the farmhouse porch, watching kids ride bikes on streets once patrolled by Lucinda's enforcers. Mailboxes stood painted every color. Gardens bloomed wild. Families painted their homes without fear of punishment. The air carried joy, not fear. Mrs. Atkins eased into the rocker beside me, handing me sweet tea. Your grandfather would be proud, she whispered. I gazed across the reclaimed fields. He always said the best trap isn't about catching someone. It's about proving they were wrong to step here in the first place. Her eyes glistened. Well, Daniel, you sprung it. And you gave this town its soul back. I looked toward the 68 homes, now rightfully and fairly owned by those who lived within. They weren't symbols of theft anymore. They were testaments to justice, resilience, and the legacy of a man who refused to be erased. For the first time since the battle began, peace settled in. The Harris land was finally safe, not just for me, but for every family who called it home. If this journey taught me anything, It's that legacy isn't about deeds or surveys. It's about defending what matters most, even when the odds tower against you. My grandfather didn't leave me riches, he left me truth, grit, and a community in need of someone who wouldn't back down. In a world where power bends rules, sometimes all it takes is one person who won't sell out no matter the cost. So, I'll leave you with this: justice never comes easy. It demands grit, persistence, and sacrifice. But when you stand firm, you don't just win for yourself. You win for everyone standing beside you. If this story hit you, drop a comment below and tell me. Have you ever pushed back against something that felt impossible to beat? Hit that like button if you believe truth should always win over corruption. And don't forget to subscribe, because more battles for justice, resilience, and truth are coming, and you won't want to miss what happens next.